Welcome to Get Paid for Your Pad, the definitive show on Airbnb hosting, featuring the best advice on how to maximize profits from your Airbnb listing, as well as real-life experiences from Airbnb hosts all over the world. Welcome. We are your hosts, Josefa Kapadia and Jasper Rivers.
Get paid for your pad. 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 Get paid for your pad.
This episode is brought to you by Hostfully, a company that helps you make beautiful guidebooks for your listing. Make your own at hostfully.com/pad. And as a special for Get Paid for Your Pad listeners, you get a free guidebook consultation after you make your guidebook. Welcome everybody to episode 113 of Get Paid for Your Pad. So I am in Florida right now. I just finished the Date with Destiny. If you've heard about it, it's a Tony Robbins event. It was a 6-day event. It was very intense, and it's all about how to make the most out of your life, how to always be in a good state, and all sorts of other good stuff and learning lessons. So I'm totally inspired and ready to take on life by the fullest. And to start this episode, I just want to share a personal decision that I've made. As you know, in Amsterdam, the government has imposed a rule that Airbnb hosts can only host for 60 days a year. And that rule has actually been in place for a while, but now Airbnb is going to enforce it and basically prevent Airbnb hosts from renting out more than 60 days for full entire homes by blocking their calendar. So I had to make a decision on what to do with my apartment, and I've decided to go ahead and sell it. And I'm planning to reinvest the money elsewhere, somewhere around the world. I don't know where yet, but I'm going to basically do research and figure out what are the places where you can do Airbnb, where it's profitable, and preferably also a place where I would like to stay myself, because that's one of the reasons why I love doing Airbnb, is that I can stay in my own places whenever I want to. And so that's what I'm going to be doing in the next few months. And I'm going to document every single step that I take, because I know there's a lot of people who have similar plans, people who want to invest in an Airbnb, they want to do their second Airbnb and potentially also abroad. So I'm going to document everything. And my plan is to once I've set up these new Airbnb business in different places around the world, I'm going to publish a book which basically tells the whole story and also has a how-to guide where I'm basically going to implement all the different learning lessons and takeaways that I've had throughout this process. So I'm also going to post regular updates on Instagram. So if you're on Instagram and you're not following me or interested, then you can follow me at Get Paid for Your Pad. And also on my Facebook page, which is also called Get Paid for Your Pad, I will post a weekly video with some updates on how things are going. But now we are going to talk to Daniel, and Daniel is our guest for today. Daniel has worked at Airbnb, and he's an Airbnb host, and he has a really cool service that's called Optimize My Airbnb. And he's recently looked at my listing and sent me a report with improvements. And I was really curious to get his insights, because he's a bit of an insider, and he came up with some pretty awesome suggestions for my listing. And so I was very excited about it, and I figured, I have to share this with you guys. So Daniel, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks for having me, Jasper. I think regarding your message at the beginning, you should solicit advice from some of your listeners as to where it might be a good place to buy. I'm sure some of them have some good intel.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's a very good idea. So anyone who has some good recommendations, I would definitely appreciate any advice. So you can email me at jasper@getpaidforyourpad.com. What do you think?
Me?
Yeah.
When I was working at Airbnb, I know a guy in finance who there's a lot of data available to employees, and a guy in finance who I would consider smart, took all this data. He was thinking of buying a house as well, and he landed on Seattle. So I would say look at Seattle.
Interesting. Okay, I will definitely look at that. What are the regulations there? Because one of the first things I'll look at is, what are the regulations right now? What's the enforcement, and how likely is that going to change? Because I don't really want to buy an apartment and then having to sell it again in a few years when Airbnb blocks the calendar.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't know. This was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. So the regulations had changed, whatever they were back then. But I do read a lot of news on Airbnb on a daily basis, and I can't think I've heard anything about Seattle. So I'm guessing maybe the regulations aren't as stringent as London and Barcelona, Amsterdam, San Francisco. The list goes on.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll definitely look into that. But let's start with an introduction about what you've been up to and what are you up to right now.
Sure. I'll start with January 2013. That's when I heard about Airbnb. My roommate told me about it, and I was looking for a job at the time. And so I applied for a position there. Didn't get it, got a job at a different place, but stayed in touch and started working at Airbnb a few months later and was in finance. And so did for a couple of years and then left to join a local Airbnb property management company here in San Francisco and then the greater Bay Area. And I did that for about a year. And then I decided to leave and start my own Airbnb property management company up. And I did that in July, which I still have a small operation out here. But I quickly realized that I might not want to be in Airbnb property management for just a few reasons, personal reasons. It wouldn't let me travel as much as I wanted to. And so I started thinking about what I could do that was more online. And I remembered when I was at the Airbnb property management company after I was at Airbnb. And to clarify, when I say Airbnb property management, it's not affiliated with Airbnb. It's a separate property management company that we only listed our listings on Airbnb, short-term property management. So I went back to that year when I was at this company, and when we had lagging listings, I would go into the listings and fiddle around, change some things around that I thought would result in more bookings. And undoubtedly, for the vast majority of these, after I made these changes, there was a booking like day of or the next day. It was very quick. And that was incentive enough to me because I, at the time, had a bonus and it was based on revenue. So I started doing this a bit more to the listings that weren't doing as well. And I started noticing trends. And that's where the idea came from. And then I refined it a little bit more and created this website, which produces a 8 to 12 page report, depending on how much help your listing needs. And that's the flagship service that I offer right now.
Very cool, very cool. And so let's talk about some of the best recommendations that you have for Airbnb hosts. Let's say the top 3.
Yeah, let's get right into it. So I think the first one that I'll go to, because I probably see this the most, is the title. A lot of people, for some reason, put 2-bed, 1-bath, luxurious, spacious house. And there's 2 things wrong with that title. 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom. Typically, the guest has already searched for this. At a very minimum, likely they've searched for 2 bedrooms. 1 bathroom is just kind of assumed. And luxurious, spacious is descriptive, but if you were to search your neighborhood, there's probably a lot of houses that have very similar descriptive words: bright, beautiful, whatever, these kind of generic descriptive words. So what I always do on 100% of my listings, I've never done this, is I'll change the title. And my recommendation is to put an amenity in the title. Like if you have a rooftop balcony or a hot tub, or in some cities, parking available, highlight this to the guest so that when they're on the search results, you're giving them a few more bits of information that your competitors aren't, and they're more likely to click on your listing. That would be the one that I think is most common. The most important one, though, I think is photos. A lot of people have too many photos. A lot of people have blurry photos. A lot of people have numerous angles of the same room. A lot of people don't highlight their best photos first. A lot of people don't put captions on their photos. Photos are the most important of the listing, and on 100% of listings, I'll change a lot with the photos because people are visual nowadays. People have, with Snapchat and Tinder and Instagram, people have short attention spans. They're as short as, or as quick as they can swipe their finger. That's people's attention spans. So you really want to highlight your best photos first, and specifically, obviously, but I guess it's not so obvious, your very best photo first. And then to add on to that, you want to be careful with your first photo because, so this is the third recommendation. The second recommendation was photos in general. The third recommendation is your cover photo, your first photo, because most people, when they choose their cover photo, they're looking at the full size image on their laptop. But keep in mind that when a guest is searching, they see a smaller thumbnail version of that photo. So this photo could look great when it's blown up, but if there's too much detail, when that's all shoved together, it doesn't look as good. So the cover photo, usually I do a photo that's a little more zoomed in, that someone can really figure out what they're looking at, and it's obviously got to look good and be clear.
Yeah, I think you're making some really good points, and it's interesting that one of the things you recommend that I totally agree with is when it comes to photos. I remember writing an article, a very long article about how to optimize your photo portfolio, and it's on getpaidforyourpad.com. But one of the insights that I had was I was thinking, on the one hand, you want to group the photos, but at the same time, you also want your best pictures to be first. And I struggled with that a little bit because I was thinking, okay, it makes sense to have, if you have 3 pictures of the bedroom, to put them together. If you have 4 pictures of the living room, you put them together. But then, it's very important, as you mentioned, the attention span is very short. So it's very important to get as much interest with the first pictures, because those are the pictures that people will look at first. And so what you recommended, what I think is really important, is you just pick the best photo of each of your sections, so to speak, and you put those first, and then the rest of your pictures, those can be grouped together.
Yep, that's exactly what I recommend. You gave away my secret, Jasper.
Well, that's what I'm here for.
No, I'm kidding. There are no secrets. You can go to my blog as well, and I give up. If you have the time to read, you can go and learn all the, I'm air quoting right now, you can learn all the secrets that I have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And the other things that you mentioned, I think are also really good. You actually recommended a different title for my listing, which is really awesome. And I've implemented it as well. I really like how you came up with those stars, like the first word in my title now has 2 big stars on either side, which kind of like makes it stand out, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's all about standing out. There's so much competition, especially whenever I go to a new city, I'll look at the competition, especially in Amsterdam. There's a ton of competition, and so you just want to stand out. So yeah, sometimes I'll add in stars to a listing, which I think if a guest is scrolling down, they don't see that they'll kind of perk up and be more likely to click on the listing.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's really good advice. Let's do one more recommendation.
One more recommendation? Okay. So I will say there's so many. Which one is?
Well, let me give you what I thought was one of your other really good insights that I've used to improve my listing, and that is the about the listing section and the description. So I always felt like I should provide people as much information as possible, and to make it readable, I use short paragraphs with very descriptive words that help people imagine the experience versus just listing the facts. And one of the things that you mentioned that really stuck with me was you said, well, most people just don't take the time to read everything, and so a better way to do it is to use short bullet points that sort of capture the reader's interest, that they can consume very quickly. Instead of having to read a whole paragraph, they'll just, they'll be able to just look at quick bullet points like, oh, it has a hot tub, it has a balcony, it has like really awesome bed sheets, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's definitely a big one, especially at the very top. Just that first summary part. Yeah, I almost always do bullet points. It's just to get the person excited. Oh, they have a hot tub. They got a washer dryer. They have a 80-inch HD TV. They have memory foam mattresses. So just like a bunch of bullet points. The one exception is the neighborhood part. I think it does make sense to be, I call it flowery language. I think in the neighborhood part, it does make sense to have a bit more flowery language, describe your neighborhood a bit more. What's the guest going to see when they walk outside? But with that as the exception, yeah, I always prefer bullet point suggestions. But what I was going to say is I was thinking the three tips before I gave you, and this one as well as a listing tip, I was thinking of more of a hosting tip.
Okay.
So one, and this I think this was the first blog post that I ever wrote, but a lot of hosts complain to me that their guests don't read, which is true, they don't. So a suggestion that I make for a lot of them is at the very end of your listing, like in the getting around section, or maybe even the additional rules, you can put you could put a short blurb saying, "Hey, if you read all of this, just put this code word." The example I give is banana pancakes. Put this code word in your message so that I know you've read all the way down here, because I find that guests who've read the list completely are always a good match. And so if a guest inquires without that code word, you know that they haven't read your whole listing. And some hosts do have some really important rules that guests need to know prior to booking. And so if you get a message without this code word, you can just simply say, "Hey, I noticed that the guests who have the best experiences are those that read my whole listing. So please make sure you read the whole listing and then send me another message," something like that.
Right. That's a good point. What do you think about the instant book feature?
I was never a huge fan of it because as a host, it never worked for me. And then they started giving them a boost. It makes sense, but it's really not in the Airbnb style. I think it should be there, but I think they push it a lot. When I search, a box pops up that says like, "Hey, put this instant book on. It's better for you." When I created a listing recently, or when I was optimizing a listing recently, I actually turned it off on accident, and I had to go through like a 6 or 7 step tutorial about why I shouldn't turn it off. It took me like 5 minutes. And then I eventually just turned it right back on because that's what this host wanted. But so I think it's needed, but it shouldn't be a huge focus that it is.
Right. I just remembered that there was one other thing that you recommended that I changed. So I've always been using 2 nights as a minimum stay. And you recommended to setting it to 1 night. And the reason why I put it at 2 nights in the first place was because I was thinking, it's a lot of hassle to sort of turn over the house for just 1 night. And I just figured it would put a lot of stress on my property manager, to do these 1-day turnovers. But after you recommended it to me, I kind of revisited the idea of allowing 1-night stays, and I had a chat with the lady that manages my house, and she actually was okay with it because I guess in her mind she's just thinking more bookings means also that I'm going to make more money as well, and so I decided to accept 1-night stays, and I immediately got 2 1-night bookings, which is great because I also think that. The more bookings that you get, the more people that you host, the more reviews that you get, it all helps. So other than the financial gain of having that 1 night, it's also the activity, the extra conversion that, because I'm sure Airbnb looks at, how many people look at your listing and how many people actually book it. And so every booking, I think, helps to get more bookings in the future.
That's true. That obviously assuming you're a good host and getting good reviews. But I think that's true. The problem with 2-night stays, and out of all the listings I've taken a look at, I would say 95% of them have at a minimum 2-night stays. No one ever has really 1-night stay. So another blog post that I'm going to write is why you should be dog friendly. there's probably like 5% of listings on Airbnb that are dog friendly. Most people just kind of defer to no pets, but if you're dog friendly, now you're opening up yourself to all these other guests. But the problem with the 2-night stay on Airbnb is that I wish they had a feature that would allow you to do 2-night minimum stays. But if you have an orphan night, 1 night open, that the guest could book that night. And I would even like it to go a step further, that if you have an orphan night or just 1 night, it would be 10 or 15% higher, the cost, than 2 nights or longer.
Yeah, that'd be a nice option to have, nice functionality. Well, you probably still know some people at Airbnb, so maybe you can suggest it to them.
Yeah, I should. I will.
I've tried a couple digital guidebook tools these past months, and I've decided to use Hostly. I've used Hostly to create an online and printable guidebook to show my guests my favorite coffee places in town and my listing information. My guest feedback has been great. They use my recommendations, and I'm getting few questions from my guests as a result. I've included screenshots of my guidebook on Airbnb as a way to differentiate my listing from others. Make your own guidebook at hostly.com/pad. All right, so yeah, well, I definitely think you did a great job. I've thought a lot about my listing, and obviously I've talked about Airbnb quite a lot on this podcast, but also writing the book and the blog posts and everything. So, I was very curious to see your report, and I have to say I was quite impressed. I definitely got some new insights from it, so I think it was totally worth it, and that's obviously the reason why I invited you to be a guest on the show. So I definitely recommend your service to everybody. I think let's go through the details and see, and let's talk about how it works. Like, what does it cost? How can people sign up, etc.
Yeah. So it's obviously go to optimizemyairbnb.com. There is a Get Optimized yellow button at the top right of every page, and the cost is $99. And I advertise on my homepage, earn 627% more within a week after my optimization. So to clarify that, I get a few questions on that. For an additional $50, I'll go in and make all these changes for you. Plus, I'm able to do additional analysis over photos and text. So anyone of my hosts who pays an additional $50, I monitor the listing for the next 7 days, and I compare how much reservation income they got in that next 7 days, and I compare that to their nightly rate, and that's where the 627% comes from. So if your nightly rate's $100, you can expect on average $627 in the next 7 nights. So that's where that number comes from. And if you have questions about that, you can ask me. But the service is $99. If you're not sure if you need it, I always recommend hosts send me their listing. Just send me an email with their listing, and I'll let you know very honestly how much you could benefit from my service. There's some people who I just give them a few tips and say, you're already doing great. It probably won't be worth your money. And the reason I do that is because I offer a full refund. So if someone pays and they're not happy, then I'll give them a full refund, no questions asked if you're not satisfied. The whole reason I'm doing this is so that hosts are successful. So I offer follow-up email support as well after you purchase it. So I know there's a lot of hosts, and I'm a host too, and I know that pain of why haven't I got an inquiry in 3 weeks? It's really confusing. And when you call Airbnb, they're not really forthcoming, which makes sense because I'm sure they get millions of those calls a day. So that's how it works. You can make the purchase. I say delivery within 24 hours. Sometimes there's a lag depending on how many I actually have to do. But that's it. Super simple.
Awesome. And of course, for Get Paid for Your Pad listeners, there's always has to be a discount. So what are you offering?
Yeah, I'm offering $10 off. When you go into the Buy Now page, there's a section where it says, how did you find my website? If you want to put Jasper there, you'll get $10 off. This will come as a credit to you after you purchase. So you're going to purchase the $99, and then I'll issue a $10 credit to you via credit card or PayPal, however you choose to pay.
Awesome. Well, that's really cool. And thank you for your generous offer. And I recommend everybody to go ahead and send Daniel an email. He is, even if you think that he won't be able to improve anything, he'll actually take a look at your listing and let you know if he thinks he can make a lot of improvements. And, based on my experience, I definitely think that the answer is going to be yes for most people. Well, let's say, because you've looked at a lot of listings, like what percentage of listings do you think you can make significant changes?
Okay, let's put them into two categories: someone who just needs minor changes and someone who needs significant changes. I would say that because the report that I provide, as you know, it does have specific listing recommendations, but I also provide kind of general suggestions and hosting tips. One of the general suggestions I provide is respond to reviews, and that's for a few reasons. I also have a blog post on that. So I would say that 60 to 70%, their report is 12 pages long. Sometimes they're even 13 pages long. So that would be significant. And then I'd say 20, 30%, the report comes out to only 8 pages or so.
Right. So it's the majority of the listings that you look at, you send them a 12, 13-page report with quite a lot of recommendations.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have a lot of Superhosts. Actually, I'm surprised at how many, probably about 30 to 40% who pay for my service are already Superhosts, and none of them have ever asked for a refund. So they do find it valuable, and I look at their listing and there are things that they can do to improve. So that was something that was interesting to me when I first started this.
Interesting. Yeah, I've noticed that too, that a lot of people in my community are actually already doing a pretty good job. And it just makes me think that there's kind of two categories, right? There's the people who do Airbnb, kind of on the side, and they do it for fun, and, they create their listing, and, I'm not saying they're doing a bad job, but they're not necessarily trying to optimize everything or make the full 100% out of it, what they can get out of it. And then there's a group of people who see it more as they have an asset and they want to monetize it and they want to just make the most out of it. Yeah. I mean, people have a lot going on. If you wanted to focus on this, you can really think about how ways you can improve. You can find blogs and read about ways to do it. But people have a lot going on. I think there's a lot of value in just saving them time by looking at their listing and making the changes right there for them. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, Daniel, thanks a lot for coming on the show. And, I hope that a lot of people will go ahead and use your service. And I'm sure they'll probably make their money back really quickly. Like I made my money back really quickly because I immediately got 2 one-night bookings. So thanks a lot, and good luck with everything.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm a fan of the podcast, so it's an honor to be on.
Awesome. So I'll just quickly repeat the offer. So if you go to optimizemyairbnb.com and in the how did you find us box, you can mention my name and then you get $10 off the service. So it'll be $89 instead of $99. And those $10 will be credited to you after you've purchased the service. And of course, you can also go to getpaidforyourpad.com where you will find the show notes of this episode and all the links, as well as all sorts of other articles about Airbnb. And next week there will be another episode, so we'll see you then.
Get paid for your pad. 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 Get paid for your pad.